questions. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Sarah Scruggs. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist at the Harvard University Employees Credit Union, and I'll be doing the beginning of our presentation, and Migdalia Gomez, our Community Engagement Manager, will join us in the second half of the presentation. And she will be also looking for the Q&As, as I will, throughout our time. So don't hold your questions till the end. If you have a question on a specific topic, don't hesitate to let us know or ask us. Harvard University Employees Credit Union is Harvard's not-for-profit financial institution. We exclusively serve the Harvard community. So all of the employees of Harvard, including all affiliate teaching hospitals of Harvard, and we offer a ton of different products ranging from credit cards to checking accounts to boat and RV loans coming soon. So we are glad to serve you in whatever way we can. If you have questions about membership or any of the products or services that we offer at the credit union, Migdalia and myself are happy to answer those as well today. So if there's a question that you have that comes up throughout about membership or any product or service that we may offer, we're happy to answer those questions as well. So we wanted to start off this conversation today with a question that I hope a lot of you are having a conversation about already. And that is, who is actually going to be paying the bill for a student to go to college in your household? And this may seem like a simple question to start off with, but I think it is maybe the most important question that we have on our slides today. And that is, who is actually going to be paying? A lot of families see this in a lot of different ways. There are some families who there's going to be one sole person who will be paying for that college experience. It may be up to the student to be paying for that college experience. There are some students who have, savings accounts specifically for education. So how will you be using those? How will those come into play? But the reason why we start with this question and why we think it is so important is because you do not want to get to the day the bill comes to your house and then start having this conversation. And that's because that's a really tense time. You see that number for the first time. It can be a little overwhelming for folks. And if you haven't already had this conversation, it can be a difficult one to have. We also don't want you to get to move-in day at school or your first day of graduate classes and realize that, I never figured out who is actually going to be paying. And we could all have our own ideas of who is paying for what. And so it is a conversation that you need to have, even if maybe you've already talked about it before or like beat around the bush a little bit, but let's be clear and direct and figure out exactly who is paying for what, not just for the first year or first semester or first bill, but really think about it the whole 4 to 3 years that you'll be in school. And I think that transitions nicely into this slide. When you're thinking about going to school, this right here, we're going to be focused on undergraduate experience, but this can be taken into context for any type of school situation. You have to figure out the actual cost that you'll be paying. A lot of times, financial or higher ed institutions will give you the cost for 1 year, and then they'll break it down into one semester. Personally, I know this. I worked in an admissions office and worked with students on their financial aid packages. Migdalia was the director of financial services at a local university. So we both know that universities want to show you the lowest cost they possibly can while being honest with you about this. So it's something you'll probably have to calculate yourself. So we're going to take those billed costs annually, because the colleges will give you this, and you'll take that number. Hopefully you've gotten your financial aid in place, and so you know exactly how much you'll be getting in financial aid, and then it'll come up with what you'll be billed. So in this example, it'll be about $25,000 that this person will be billed on their account. And now we want to take you into probably what is a really tough number to look at, especially for an undergraduate experience or some graduate schools. This can be a really large number. And so It's important that you face that though, and really understand what is the investment they are making, because I definitely think it's a worthwhile investment for a lot of folks. So it is super important that you see, okay, I'm not just paying for that first year. I'll be paying for all 4, all 3, all 2. And that's an important thing to think through. Most colleges will bill per semester. Like I said, colleges want to take that really large number and break it down into something smaller and more manageable that feels easier. And so they bill each semester. And I will say most, in a sense that like we're talking 98, 90, 97% of colleges are going to be billing this way. They bill in the fall, but it's actually due normally in July or August, because a lot of universities are counting on that money before a student actually moves in on campus or before a student actually begins to take classes, because they want to make sure all of that's squared away before they actually get you on campus. So know that if you're hoping to take a big vacation in July, like I hope all of us are going to be taking soon, we deserve a little bit of a break. But know that that tuition bill could be due then as well. So don't plan to pay it in September when school starts. Plan to pay it a couple months before then and put it into your budget. And then spring semester is due around the holidays. This isn't always the most convenient time for it to be billed, but it is when the bill will come, and we want you to be prepared for that. So know that those 2 semesters will be billed around the summer and then around the holidays. So what are some ways that you could possibly reduce costs? College is expensive. And the good news is that you're making an investment in yourself to hopefully then be able to pay off loans or be able to find ways to pay that money back in some sort of way. And so what else can we do to possibly reduce the costs while we're in school? There could be some room and board options. If you are going to a local institution or your student is going to a local institution for undergraduate, there may be an option to live at home instead of live on campus. You could definitely save some money there. Look into whether your student has possibly chosen the most expensive room on campus. I've had quite a few conversations with parents who called and said they do not want a single room. They actually need a roommate because that will reduce your costs significantly. So make sure that your student isn't choosing the most expensive room if that is not within your budget. Health insurance. It is required that all students who go to college have health insurance, and this will be provided through the institution, and it will be on the bill automatically. At least that's the way it was at the university I worked at. And this can be waived. If your student is still going to be on your insurance plan as they go to college, great. I was on my family's insurance plan until I was 26 years old. I loved it. Highly recommend that if you're able to do it. But you can go ahead and waive that fee, which will be nice. Normally it's around, it's a good chunk of money. So it could save you quite a bit there. Sibling discounts. Most universities aren't doing these anymore. It really depends. I would always ask. There's no point in not asking. To see if they do have a sibling discount if multiple students do go to that institution. Academic planning. Your student could be taking classes during summer term. Summer term classes normally are a little bit less expensive. And now in the world of Zoom classes, they may not even have to live on campus to take those classes. They may be able to live back at home and still take those classes. They may be able to go to the local community college or go to another institution that may be cheaper for the summer and then transfer those credits in. They could possibly graduate early. I know for myself, I wanted to spend definitely my all 4 years there. If I could have spent more, I would. Parents said no. Totally understandable. But if your student is looking for ways to save money, graduating early could be something by kind of condensing their 4 years into maybe 3.5 or even 3 by taking those summer terms. Transferring credits. A lot of high school students have the opportunity these days to take dual enrollment courses through their local community college or maybe an in-state university. and then they can transfer them into their university to save a little bit of time and maybe graduate a little early. And then scholarships while they're in school. A lot of scholarships come to students as first year students. That's where you'll see the bulk of the opportunity to earn scholarships, even for graduate programs as well. You'll see that most of it comes with that first year. But there are some possibilities for returning students. I know that each year at my institution, there were 2 students selected from each major to receive additional scholarship money specifically from that major department. And so you can look into this and ask questions, have your student ask questions about this. And then being a resident advisor. So this is more like an on-campus job, but a lot of students like doing this because it can be a lot of fun. They have a good time and they get free room and board for doing this. So that can be a really wonderful opportunity if your student is looking into that. And there could be opportunities for graduate students on some campuses to also be a type of resident assistant or maybe house manager or something of that nature. There are outside scholarship programs that students can apply for, one of them being the credit union scholarship. If you are a member of the credit union, your student may have access to apply for this scholarship. And this scholarship for this year is now closed, but if your student is going to school in the upcoming years, this is open to any students their senior year of high school to apply. And we have 10 $1,000 scholarships available each year. The application is extremely short. We believe that it really gives us a good idea of who the students are. And if you're ever interested in being a part of the selection committee for this and you're a member of the credit union, we do host a scholarship committee or review committee, each year as well. So we would be glad to have any members apply for that as well. So really when we get down to kind of the foundational levels of how are we going to pay for school, there comes 3 different sources of tuition payments. First being your past income that you may have had, your present income now, and then your future. So we have past, present, and future. Not the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, but the tuition payments of past, present, and future. So what do we mean by this? Past income, we're talking about your savings. You may have had college savings set up for your student since they were young. You may have a new savings account that you've set up recently that you've been putting money into for them. But if you've had your college savings plan or any personal savings accounts that are being set aside for the students, that would more be your past income. Conversations to have around past income: use all the funds for the first year, or should you space it out over all 4 years and then pay a little bit each year? What would be easiest for you and your family? Maybe you believe that, you know what, we've had a hard past year. Maybe someone in your family has unfortunately lost hours or lost pay, but you believe in the year to come, they will pick up another job or more hours. Then maybe it's best to use all those funds right now so that you have the opportunity to save up for the next 3 years. Or maybe you just want to space it out on all 4 years and you can use student loans to help cover some of that other things. But we'll speak about some more strategies for student loans to come. But it's important to at least have this conversation. How and when do you need to withdraw those funds? There is a process. If you have a special savings plan for college through the state or through the federal government, there is a special process for how to withdraw these funds and get them to the institution that your student has chosen. So it's important that you look into these rules as they come up. And then what about your other children? If this is your first child going to college, you want to make sure that you are planning for everyone, not just one at a time. And so making sure that you have a plan set up for each of them. And this plan may look totally different. I know in my family, each of us had very different college experiences, very different college bills that came to our parents. And so they had to think about it a little bit differently for each of us. I was only 12 years old when my first sibling went to college, so they didn't know exactly what all of our plans would be. But they made sure to at least have a conversation about, okay, what is best for our family now and what could possibly be better for us in the future. Your present income. What are you making right now? What cash on hand do you have each month to pay towards a tuition bill? And that's really what I want to speak about on this page, is reviewing the college website to see if payment plans are offered. Payment plans can be a huge help to people. I know that is one of the ways that we decided to pay my tuition bill at school, was monthly payment plans. And payment plans can come with a small fee. I know our kind of origination fee for the payment plan was about $60 each semester. But for my family, that helped us because we were able to pay month to month rather than pay it all in July or all in December. Because for my family, we wanted to have that present income that they were making each month then go to the tuition bill. A lot like a regular loan that you might be paying off, or rent or mortgage, is that every month you get to pay a certain amount, and that would be what the payment plan might offer. Most universities these days do have payment plans. They will range in fees. So your payment plan may be wildly more expensive than the one at my institution about, 6-7 years ago. But it could be an option for you, and it could make the burden of paying your tuition a little bit lighter on you and your family. So it's important to check the website as well as talk with the financial aid officer. At the end of the day, the people who represent the university to incoming students are there to help you. That is the point. That is their job. That's what they're getting paid for. So if you have questions about the payment plan, let the financial aid office know. If they're the ones who are taking care of the payment plans, it may be the billing office that may be taking care of it. So make sure you know who to call. But review that website to see if the payment plans are even offered. And then, of course, there's student loans to think about. And this is part of future income. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Migdalia to speak a little bit more about future income, including federal student loans and private loans.
Thank you, Sarah. So now that we have an understanding of how you can utilize your past income, present, wouldn't be a paying the tuition bill presentation if we didn't touch upon future income. And really, future income is borrowing today with the expectations that it will be paid with tomorrow's income. And tomorrow's income is not literally tomorrow, though it could be depending on the loan, and we'll get to that. But tomorrow could also be months or years from now. There are different types of loans. I'm going to start a little bit with the student loans. You have your federal student loans, which are subsidized and unsubsidized. You have the PLUS. These are the ones that you complete the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, and they will give you access to the federal student loans. These are the ones that are currently at 0% through September of this year as a result of COVID. And they are the ones that will get the federal benefits. They are the ones that are all over the media because people have been saying, well, what's going to happen with these loans? We don't quite know what's going to happen. That's still being decided, but these are the ones that tend to get much more attention. Then you have the private student loans, and the private student loans, you can apply for these in different locations. You can apply with your credit card company, with your primary financial institution, with big companies that focus just on private student loans. So let's go into a little bit of these more in depth. The subsidized and unsubsidized loans, I want to point out for those of you that are parents or perhaps have attended college yourself I'd say more than a couple of years ago, at least around a decade or so ago, and are going back, you may have heard these referred to as the Stafford loan. They have a new name. They're subsidized and unsubsidized federal direct, so no more Stafford. We did think it was important to include that since sometimes people may think, I thought I had those loans, but it had a different name. If that's you, you're not incorrect. They were called the Stafford loans. For these, the student is going to be the primary borrower, meaning, and actually the sole borrower. When the student completes the FAFSA, it is under their name. The subsidized and unsubsidized loans will be available to the student. It does not mean that they will automatically receive those loans. They do need to accept the loan. There's paperwork. And understandably, you wouldn't want to just apply for aid and be granted loans and be into a repayment without opting into it. So they are available to students, and the paperwork is very simple for them to accept these loans. But this is important to know because many times, having worked in a financial aid office, as Sarah mentioned, I had seen students that expected the loans to automatically be paid, applied to the tuition bill, but they can't unless the student accepts the paperwork, and it's all online, very simple. While the student is enrolled at least half time, they will not be required to make payment. So this is not required, but if the student wanted to, they could make payment. Now, what's the difference between the sub and unsub? That's a very common question. Subsidized means that the government is paying the interest while the student is enrolled at least half time. Unsubsidized means that that interest is accumulating but won't be added on to the total amount borrowed until the end of the student's academic time or until they stop being enrolled at least half time. There are some families that may decide, you know what, we're going to pay the interest on the unsubsidized loans because we don't want that to capitalize. We don't want that to be added onto the total of the loans later. So that is one option that's available to you, but it's not required. And as we go through the rest of today's presentation, we're going to give you all types of information, but it goes back to Sarah's first point or first slide. Who's paying the tuition bill? What is our strategy? So for some families, the strategy is we're going to borrow, but we're going to try to pay that interest while the student is in school. For some others, we're going to borrow and we're going to pay it afterwards, or the student will pay it. So this is one way. If you are trying to pay interest while they're enrolled, you can pay interest on the unsubsidized loans. The rates will change each academic year. Here are the rates that are currently proposed for 2021. As you can tell, graduate students will have a higher rate, and also graduate students do not have the benefit of subsidized loans anymore. That was something that was taken away a couple of years ago. And there are fees that are also associated, just meaning that if I borrow $5,000, I'm not going to get $5,000. I'm going to get $5,000 minus that loan fee. So that's something else to account for. And I keep talking about these loans, but what are the amounts? How do they work? So here you'll see that each year will vary. So you see the first year is $5,500, and then you'll continue to see that with each year, additional funds are added that the student can borrow. There is a limit as to how much the maximum that the student can borrow. It doesn't mean that they usually will need it. There are some students that may attend school for more than 4 years. So if that's the case, there's a little bit of wiggle room, but it is something that financial aid offices keep track of. So just keep in mind that if the student were to transfer or the student were to take a year off and go back to school, there is a limit as to how much they can borrow. There's a national student loan data system in which the financial aid offices will go and verify how much the students have borrowed in the past. So that's just something to keep in mind. And there's also a maximum, especially for the undergraduate students in this example, there is a maximum of subsidized loans. Sometimes we get the question, well, if I'm eligible for $5,500, I want all $5,500 subsidized. Of course, we all would. That would mean the interest is being paid by the government while the student is enrolled at least half time. But it doesn't work that way. The maximum would be $3,500, and that is based off of financial need. So not everyone will qualify. And the best part is you don't have to worry about doing the math. All of that is done behind the scenes, but it is important for you to be aware of it, because if you have a close friend whose child is going to school at the same time that yours is, they may get $3,500 in subsidized, or you may, but somebody else might only get $2,000 in subsidized. So there's a reason that goes back to financial need as to why not everyone will get the maximum that is subsidized. Then you have the federal the federal plus and the graduate plus loan. The plus is through the federal government. This means that a lot of the different benefits that are tied to these loans also apply to the plus loans. There are two different categories. You have the plus, which is for parents of undergraduate students. meaning that if I am the parent of a child or step parent, I can borrow a loan to help them go to school. But it's my loan, it's the parent loan. It would appear on my credit report. I would be responsible for paying back that loan. If the student wants to, yes, that's something that could be arranged behind the scenes, if you will, but it will always be the parent's loan. It's always going to appear on the parent's credit report. It cannot be transferred to the student. It is a loan that it's the parent's loan. Who pays for it? Anyone can technically pay anyone else's loan, but it will always be the responsibility of the parent. So if somebody else says they're going to pay and they don't make that payment, that would have a negative impact on the parent that borrowed that loan. There is a grace period if they choose to defer it. So as a parent, your loan would go into immediate repayment, meaning that within 30 to 60 days after it's applied to the account or after it's dispersed, then the repayment would begin. But the parent could choose to say, you know what, I want to pay for it 6 months after the student graduates. That is an option that you have when you apply for that loan. The Graduate Plus, this is different because it's for the graduate student. It is very similar to the Plus loan, as you can see here with the interest rate, with the loan fees. Both will require a credit check. The biggest difference for the Graduate Plus is, again, it's the student as a student that is borrowing that. So it will be on the student's credit report. It will be up to the student to repay it. And because it is a student loan, the student does get that 6-month grace period automatically, meaning that you don't have to make payment until the student stops being enrolled at least half time. And if you are denied the Federal Parent Plus loan, there are a couple of different options. You can appeal, you can do a cosigner, there are additional loans that can be borrowed. I'm not going to spend any more time on this slide. The takeaway is if you apply for the Plus loan and you are denied, it doesn't end there. We have to keep in mind these are federal loans, and because they are federal loans, they tend to have more options than if you were to apply for a private loan. Studentaid.gov is where you can get much more information about all of the different loans that we've spoken about. Anywhere else that you go, you're going to get the information that they received from this website. So this is the source. This is where we recommend just go straight to the source, get the information there about the federal student loans. Also, if you want to know a little bit more about the difference between sub and unsub, what goes into applying for the Plus loan or the Graduate Plus, all of that information is on the studentaid.gov website, and they also have an app if you prefer that as well. Annualcreditreport.com. If you have not pulled your credit report recently, it's something we always recommend. It's always good to just have an idea of where do you stand with your credit, because that has a big impact on your eligibility for loans and can also impact the college experience overall. I've had to see many tears, unfortunately, in my profession when I worked in financial aid, because many times parents were denied a loan and the student had to take a semester off, or they had to make significant changes. So maybe they wanted to live on campus, but now they were commuting and they didn't anticipate that. Or maybe the student had to take on a job to help pay for their tuition. And a lot of things could be avoided if we do them with time. And one of them is just knowing where you stand with your credit. So if you're not sure, pull your credit report. Do this months before that tuition bill is due. So if something comes up, then you have time to make changes and bring up your credit score. And it does not impact your credit score negatively if you pull your own credit report, because you're doing it for educational purposes. There are non-educational loans as well. So the ones I've been speaking of primarily, they have been student loans. So they're loans they're educational loans, I should say, because there are parent loans that are for the students, but they're specifically for education. But there are other types of loans. We all have, we all could go to a financial institution and ask for a personal loan. Homeowners can, if you have equity on your home, you can look into a HELOC. You could go look into a home equity loan. For some people, they could decide to put it on a credit card. So there are technically other ways to pay outside of educational loans. But before you go that path, we just want you to consider a lot of different things. One of them being the tax implications. In the past, you were able to borrow if you owned a home and had equity on that home, you were able to borrow a loan against that equity and would be able to deduct the interest that you have paid. That is no longer the case. So that is something to be mindful of. If you think that's an option, you still may decide, maybe the rates are, fairly low and they're still lower than student loans. You may decide, you know what, it's lower, I'm going to go with that option. That is a personal choice. Just make sure that you are aware that what potential tax implications there may or may not be. The fees, that's a big one. Many educational loans will have, not all, but some will have some fees. Same with some personal loans or credit cards. I think of fees with credit cards, like even the interest rate, like if you are going to use a credit card to pay for a semester, well, what's your rate? Are you going to be able to pay it off in full within that month? Just because I've seen families that will use a credit card for the points, but on the flip side, if you're carrying a balance, those points aren't beneficial because you're just getting a reduced interest rate. Meaning that if I carry a balance and my rate is 15% and the cash back is 2%, well, I'm paying 13% for that. And then also, and I always, we always have to be aware that we don't quite know what's going to happen. We have experienced this in the past year and a half. We know with the pandemic, we've seen this firsthand. And many times, if you tap into non-educational loan funds and don't have emergency funds or don't have another backup, then what will you do when something happens? And, life happens. It could be if you use a HELOC, if you use a home equity loan, and then the roof goes. What if you've already utilized all the funds for education? How will you pay for that? Retirement is a big one because we have had families that say, well, I'll just pull it from my retirement account. Well, then what happens when you want to retire? And I especially think parents to take a look at your finances. And if you're considering that option, how long will you have to defer your retirement versus your child or a student taking on some debt so that you can have the retirement that you want to have? And a lot of there are a lot of questions that come out of these sessions, and that's okay. We want you to have the questions today versus when that tuition bill is due, versus having it when you're in the front of someone and moving into campus could be impacted. So it's okay to leave here with some questions. I'm actually hoping you're all jotting down some questions. And there are some other factors to consider. I touched a little bit about this on the other slide about fees, but you want to consider how much can you actually borrow. There are going to be situations that the student or you as a parent may decide, I want to borrow a little bit more because the student's going to need books, or they're going to need a computer, they're going to need additional resources, and those are going to cost money. There is a maximum that any student can borrow based off of the financial aid that they've received. And essentially what will happen is that number will be calculated by the financial aid office, and that is the maximum that you can borrow up to. Very few people tend to borrow up to that max because your tuition bill will be lower than the maximum. There's some wiggle room that's allowed in there. But if you are in a situation that you need funds outside of just paying the tuition bill, know that that is an option. As with everything else, keep in mind that's additional loan funds. Those are additional loan funds that you're borrowing. So we just want to make sure you are aware what the repayment implications will be and that you're comfortable paying back those loans at a later point. The fees as well, there are some loans, as we saw, that have origination fees, meaning that you're applying for the loan. You're not charged for the loan application, but you are charged for when the loan goes onto the account. So if I borrow $5,000, I'm not actually going to get $5,000. You want to find that out as part of the application. It is common, it's fairly common, but don't just compare the interest rate, compare the fees as well. There are some loans that may have a great interest rate, but the fee may be significantly high, or vice versa. And then there are different types of rates. There are fixed, there are variable, just like any other consumer product. With the rates as they are now, a variable may be very appealing because they are lower. But with rates potentially increasing in the future, what will that mean? At that point, when they increase, if you've borrowed, $50,000 at 2%, but that 2% turns to 4%, that's a significantly different repayment structure. And that can have an impact on your budget. So just be mindful of, if I am going to borrow a variable rate, perhaps you borrow it at a lower dollar amount so that if it increases, the rate increases, you at least have some time and to make up for the payment or to adjust the payment, I should say. And it won't be for as long of a repayment period, because you could always, if it's a lower loan amount, pay it off faster. And with most loans, you can do that. You can pay them off faster, meaning that there are no prepayment penalties. You always want to check though, but most loans will give you that flexibility. So if the student or if the parent or if someone decides to do a gift and help you pay that loan earlier, or there's a bonus that comes in, many lenders will gladly accept the funds earlier, but you always want to double check. And who's the borrower? We've talked about this and it keeps coming back to those conversations. For some, it's going to be under the student's name. It'll be both student and parent. For some, it could be a family friend, a family member. It could be a relative. It could be a friend. So who's going to be the person that's going to be, or the people that will be on that loan? And there are rates, discounts too, that are available with most loans. And this is a very easy way to save some money, is if you have your loans automatically set to be repaid out of your checking account, you have an ACH, then that can help you have an interest rate reduction of about 1/4 percentage point, which may not seem like a lot, but if we're borrowing a significant amount, that those savings do add up. We get the question, well, how does it work if I'm going to take an educational loan? Well, what will happen is the student will, or the family or the friend, whomever is applying for that loan, will apply for the loan. Typically, you want to try to do it about a month or so before the bill is due. Let's not rush ourselves. Let's give ourselves enough time. But you apply for the loan and you can apply for either just the fall semester or you can apply for the academic year. With educational loans, you can always apply for more. And if you need to reduce it, you can talk to the school and they will reduce the loan amount. So you don't even have to go directly with the lender if it's an educational loan. Once the loan is approved, there is additional paperwork that the student needs to complete that usually would get people thinking that they were done, but they didn't complete the paperwork. So just know, just as with most other loans, once you're approved, it doesn't just end there. There's usually paperwork to accept the loan. And once you do that, once that loan is accepted, the next steps are that the institution will be notified of the loan amount. And if the tuition bill due date is, let's say, August 3rd, that doesn't necessarily mean that the school will get the money August 3rd, and that's okay. You may get a notification that your loan will be dispersed to the school on August 20th, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you have to worry. The school knows that the money is coming, and for your purpose, you are considered paid, assuming you've done all the paperwork for the loan. So you don't have to worry so much as to when the school receives the money. They work with the lenders. They are in agreement. They have a process in place. For you as a borrower, you want to make sure that you are meeting the tuition bill due date, as in the sense that you've met your obligations, you've done the application, the loan application, you've submitted necessary documents as well. And if it's a non-educational loan, this is where it could be a little bit different. So if it's a loan you took against retirement or a home equity loan or a personal loan, that is 100% up to that loan or lender. So most of the time, what will happen is you apply for a loan and then the funds go directly to you. And these are non-educational loans. Keeping in mind, educational loans will have tax benefits that non-educational loans won't. With educational loans, students can write off or can take a deduction of up to $2,500 of interest paid, or if it was a student loan, or parents. The parents can also do it, whoever the borrower is. You don't have that with non-educational loans. This is another thing to consider when you're comparing, should I go with educational loan or a non-educational loan? And speaking of tax benefits and different things to consider, if you want to learn a little bit more about the student loan interest deduction, or just in general, as the student is going to school, what can help reduce the tax burden for those academic years? There's a lifetime learning credit, the American Opportunity Credit. There's so many resources out there, the deductions, credits. If you want to get some information, you can get the publication 970. It is pretty straightforward. If you also want, you can go on the IRS website, they'll have the information. Always going to send you to the source. Yes, you can do a Google search, you can find other sources, but the tax law is coming from the IRS. This is that documentation that is utilized in determining what can and cannot be deducted. So we recommend you go straight to the source, in this case being the IRS. And we do have educational loans. So for those of you that are looking into a loan, or maybe after commencement are looking to refinance a loan, we do have some available on our website, which you're always welcome to look into. And we talked a little bit about credit and the importance of how credit works. Sarah talked about budgeting, whether you're going to use your present income or your future income. If you need support, or if you just want to talk to someone and just have them verify, I should say verify, but have them talk with you about the strategy that you have in mind, you all have access to GreenPath Financial Wellness. It's a free service that we pay for it at the credit union, so it's free for you. They do free credit counseling, meaning that they can pull your credit report and it will not impact your credit score negatively. They also do budget counseling. So if you want to just literally talk to them about what the expenses are that you're anticipating for college and what your current income is and other expenses, they can help you put together a budget for this. And they are also doing federal student loan counseling. So once the student is enrolled, or if you yourself have some federal student loans, they can also assist with that as well. And on our website, we have a good amount of articles. We have comparing award letter articles. We actually have a couple on the tuition bill. So if you want to learn more about just general paying the tuition bill information, you're welcome to subscribe to our blog, or just go onto our blog and there's a tag for college financing that you can click on to get all of the related articles. I know we went through a lot of information, so Sarah or myself, one of us will drop in the chat. I can do it. I'll drop it in the chat. If you wouldn't mind completing a quick survey, just to let us know what we can do to improve and how we can better bring more information to you. And as I drop this in the chat, if there's anything that we could clarify, any questions that you have, or maybe something that we didn't cover that you have questions about and want us to speak about, please let us know. As a reminder, I used to be the Director of Student Financial Services at a four-year liberal arts school in the Boston area, not in Boston. And Sarah used to be in admissions. So we're both very familiar with college financing, both in an undergraduate and graduate capacity. So if there are any questions that we can help answer, or anything you want us to go into further detail, please let us know. And as I wait for those questions to come in, I just want to remind you that what we talked about today was very general, and there's a reason for that. Everyone's financial situation will be based on their family or their immediate circle, or maybe they're doing it on their own. And as a result, we want to give you all information, but keep in mind that it's personal, and what works for you may not work for someone else. And we're here to help. We have resources. We have GreenPath that we referred you to. So if you do want to talk to someone in further detail about your situation, there are resources available. Specifically, GreenPath can be a great resource.